Tonight on land speculation, we will be digging into, well, the state of Minnesota. Why is Minnesota suddenly all over the news? Why is Minnesota suddenly the focal point of America's news energy, and why is Minnesota's Somali population at the focal point of all this conversation about fraud and the impact of cultural change, let's say, within this city that used to perhaps best be known more for this, the city as the largest city in the state of 10,000 lakes. Beautiful, beautiful state, the state of Minnesota, and now suddenly seems to be known more for the community, colloquially named anyway, as the sort of kin of its native Somalia, Little Mogadishu. And so tonight we're going to dig into Little Mogadishu, the neighborhood known as Cedar Riverside in Minneapolis, and try to figure out like what exactly is going on there and how on earth did it become this supposed this kind of maven, this den of fraud and things like that, allegedly. So that's where we're going with tonight's stream, and away we go. Away we go.
Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack.
This is land, this is financial speculation. That's something we do with Kinky.
Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack.
Honk, 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 honk. Give us your money.
That would be weird.
Ha, 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 ha. Ha, 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 ha. Let's see. I eat bars of soap for breakfast. I love bars of soap. After midnight, things get weird.
Quack, quack.
Oh no. Oh no.
Let it go. Let it go. Cock.
I like that one.
Quack, 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 quack.
Come on, ducks. Oh, hi everybody. Welcome to Land Speculation Live on YouTube. We've been away for a little while, at least in terms of these nightly live streams. We did stream this weekend, and man, there's a lot of kind of interesting stuff going on in the world right now. We're trying out a few new things here on YouTube, so be patient with us as we explore some new features. Anyway, we're grappling with like a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. There is, there was a big shooting at Brown University, a tragedy of the utmost proportions, with multiple students being killed by the shooter, apparently, at Brown University, the Ivy League school in Providence, Rhode Island. So that happened. We did a little video about that on Sunday morning, giving you guys a little tour of the Brown University campus and area where this all went down. And here we are, yet still a few days later, and apparently they still yet have not, at least as of when I last checked the news, found the shooter, which is a pretty alarming thing that we have this potentially armed and dangerous person. And the way they have described the shooter suggests potentially this person is maybe a little bit unstable and maybe not the kind of person that we want running on the loose. So that's a little bit alarming, let's say. And then, there's other things going on around the world. There was another big tragic shooting incident in Australia. And, look at that. Here we go. 15 people, I believe, killed in this shooting in Australia. And very, very sad, Tess Castro says here in the chat, to be sure. And, everyone is trying to very quickly apply all kinds of political implications of these kinds of things. Who did it? What does it say about our broader political universe? How can it prove that my side is right and the other side is wrong? What kind of legislation can we pass to punish the bad people and make sure that I am recognized as a good person and all that kind of stuff? And I guess the thing I would say is let's hold our horses maybe a little bit on these two shootings. Obviously, there are going to be some policy implications here in Australia with their gun policies. I'm thinking we might want to do a stream here on all of the ways that Australia has kind of gone a little bit rogue when it comes to policy of all sorts lately. And when it comes to Brown, well, I thought we were kind of at peak mass shooting a while back. I thought that maybe we were pivoting tactics a little bit. We're going to see more maybe public, the whole assassination thing that kind of gained a lot of fervor there through Luigi Mangione and Charlie Kirk and all that kind of stuff. Seemed to be picking up a little bit of steam. And now here we are talking about a school shooting once more, this time at an Ivy League university. And, violence on our streets. And immediately everyone's trying to politicize it. And, really, these are tragedies. They involve people. They involve families. They involve, somebody clearly quite deranged, I would have to think, in both cases. Although, I guess whatever the legal definitions there, I guess we'll find out through the court process. And then, of course, there was the tragedy involving Rob Reiner. Was that last night? Anyway, I don't even have a slide for that one. I'm not sure what to do with that. Anyway, yeah, tragedy all around. And yet, lurking in the background, there is all of this chatter about the state of Minnesota, and that is where we are going to go and focus our energies here tonight and give you guys a little bit of a sense of what exactly is going on in the Minneapolis neighborhood known as Little Mogadishu. So, it is good to have you guys with us here on Land Speculation on YouTube. Jeanette, Quiet Castle, and Douglas Butler, I think you guys are the medal winners here tonight. Congratulations. Thank you for being early on our stream. Norman Patterson, Tess Castro, and others. Nightbot is quacking away here. Appreciate that, Nightbot. Always pent up with energy, and we'd love to see that Spy Man also lurking around here off in the ether. So anybody else who's lurking around, welcome once more. And guys, if you wouldn't mind, as always, dropping a like and a subscribe on the video. The likes help us out with YouTube. The subscribes help you guys know when we're on. Check the description, as always, for the link to our Discord, our 24/7 chat platform, and our Duck Fund, which is our Buy Me a Coffee link. And, guys, I don't know if you've been able to tell, but over the course of the last week, we were able to restore successfully monetization capabilities on the Land Speculation account, which means we are officially back to being a YouTube partnership channel. We are one of the original YouTube partner channels. I believe they established that program back in 2008. This channel has been around since 2006. And so we are one of the originals. But, see, I thought it was copyrighted content that was getting YouTube angry at us. It turns out the reason YouTube was angry at us was that we were tackling all kinds of controversial political topics and doing too many live streams and too few videos. Too few videos relative to the number of live streams that we were doing. So all kinds of inside YouTube baseball. But anyway, we are back in the fold here. So apologies for the ads. You will see some ads. That's the downside of it here and there. And we will gradually continue to roll out features. We're going to have the ability to do super chats and all that kind of stuff if you guys feel so inclined. So anyway, it's good to have all that stuff back. Not that it necessarily matters all that much. This has always been a labor of hobby and love and whatnot for us. So anyway, here we are. So sad to hear about Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Spyman. Yeah, I agree with that. And having not really read a lot of the details of it, I guess his son was the culprit on all that. And yeah, what a tragic thing. And you know, I saw Donald Trump was in hot water today. When is Donald Trump not in hot water? For making what were certainly perceived to be insensitive comments about Rob Reiner right on the aftermath of his passing. And, you know, I do think there is consistency to be had there because, you know, not to make it a tit-for-tat situation, but if Republicans are going to complain about the politicization of Charlie Kirk's assassination, I think this is like a universal principle that should not only apply to people with whom we share politics. There is no excuse for something like that, and there should be no gloating. You have to dig deep in yourself and rediscover your humanity about your fellow human beings. And meanwhile, in Minnesota, we are trying to unpack a seemingly systemic fraud situation that seems to grow bigger by the day. Seems like everyone kind of knew it was happening all the way along, and nobody was doing anything about it. And the people that should have known better and done something about it were either complicit with it or too, let's say, buffoonish to try to do anything about it. And, you know, it's quite a situation they have up there in Minnesota these days. I don't know, I always thought of like Minnesota as a pretty unassuming state up there on top of the world. But now here we are, like Minnesota's all over the thing now. And for all kinds of reasons that seem like not particularly intuitive to a place that is known best for its cold winters, its ice fishing. You know, who would have thought like Minnesota has become the national hotbed of fraud. Minnesota is the national epicenter of the United States Somali community, which does seem, I mean, just weather-wise, it certainly seems counterintuitive. You know, normally immigrants to the United States historically came through the coasts. Like you show up in the United States, you go to the places that are the closest to get to. That's why, like, Ellis Island became a famous pass-through for immigrants. And you had the greatest concentrations of immigrants on the coasts. And now Minnesota, like smack dab in the middle of the North American continent, is suddenly the epicenter for the U.S. Somali community. So what exactly is up with that? And man, yeah, I've been like not following the news maybe as much as I should lately. I've been trying to sort of mentally reset a little bit. And so I haven't been reading all of the details of this whole thing. But every day it's like more stories, more programs that were clearly like completely corrupted. Programs that were set up for like $2 million, and then suddenly there are like $400 million of claims being paid out. And all kinds of internal political corruption at the city level, at the state level, federal representatives, and many of these programs, this Feeding Our Future fraud program. I mean, man, 78 defendants. I mean, this has been percolating here for a few weeks, and it continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. And I'm not sure if we'll ever find out exactly how many more, you know, how much money exactly is gonna be involved in all this. But man, what a thing! What a thing! And you know, it is certainly. It's certainly brought into the epicenter of everyone's attention the Minnesota state government, I guess this is the Minnesota state capital, which actually is in St. Paul. So people think Minneapolis when they think Minnesota, but St. Paul actually is the capital. Minneapolis and St. Paul are in fact different cities. St. Paul's a little smaller, a little sleepier. Minneapolis is the big city. And the former governor, or I guess the current governor, and the former vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz. This guy was going to be vice president of the United States at the epicenter of this whole thing. And now, like, man, like, I don't want to say, I'm not saying in my perspective, but man, people are looking at this guy like he's a clown now. And, I don't know what we think about that. But yeah, this is like a graph of one of these programs, the Feeding Our Future program. Claims between 2020 and 2021 skyrocketed 2,800%, and like nobody nobody seemed to like bat an eyelash that the claims went from like practically zero to 150 or 140 million dollars. Wow. So what happened? This was the state best known for Babe the Blue Ox, Paul Bunyan. This is up in Bemidji, one of my favorite cities in Minnesota. It's way up by the headwaters of the Mississippi River. You can go and like, Bemidji's a little town. It's on a little lake up. I mean, everything's on a lake up there. Do you know Minnesota actually has 16,000 lakes, not 10,000? Like they say it's the land of 10,000 lakes, but they're just being modest. They're just being modest. It's actually a state of 16,000 lakes and some. That's how you define the definition of a lake. And there is like an official definition of that, an official definition of lake that is different from a pond. But you do drive around. I guess that seems high, but you do drive around and there are lakes frickin' everywhere up in northern Minnesota. And Bemidji, certainly when I've been up there, which has been mostly the summertime, is a beautiful little town. And not a big town, but you drive a good half an hour from there, you get to the headwaters of the Mississippi River. You can wade across the Mississippi River. It is so narrow and so thin and so fledgling at that point. You can wade at your ankles across the Mississippi River and you won't drown. And that is like quintessential Paul Bunyan territory. Paul Bunyan, with his high water genes, roamed the northern Midwest across places like Bemidji and Brainerd, Duluth and Fargo, stomping all over the great North Woods up there. No, Norman, we've effectively been monetized since when was it? It was when we first got monetized. I believe it was 2014 when they started that program. I believe is when they first started. Maybe it was earlier than that. No, we were like one of the very, no, it was earlier than that. It was earlier than that. I can't remember exactly when it was, but we were one of the original monetized YouTube channels. And then we were told back around the pandemic that for some reason they had turned that off for us because we had so much. We were doing the yeoman's work of showing you guys things that YouTube didn't really like us to be showing you. And so, we took some sacrifice for that. But we have put the pieces back together. All right. Babe the Blue Ox. I don't know why he's blue. I don't know why he's blue. Of course, Paul Bunyan, I don't believe is real. I don't know, I guess it was the 1937 when he was built here? I don't know when Paul Bunyan is supposed to have actually lived. And the lakes, I mean, it is beautiful up there. Man, I mean, you go in the summertime. I mean, don't go in the wintertime. I mean, I didn't realize it was a thing up in Minnesota that people, like, literally, they have seasonal jobs. Like, even in normal white-collar professions, they have seasonal jobs where they'll work as, like, an engineer in the summertime, or they'll do like some kind of construction or something like that, and then they get laid off sometime around October, and they spend the entire winter basically the winter time they go ice fishing, and that's how they make their money. Is they go set up like an ice cabin on one of these frozen lakes. But in the summertime they're not frozen. It's still chilly, but they're not frozen, and it is very, very, very pretty up there. Lots of mosquitoes though. Lots of mosquitoes in northern Minnesota. I have no idea if Paul Bunyan had kids. Like Jack and Jill Bunyan. It's like Shaq, one of the Paul Bunyan descendants. I don't know. I need to dig into the whole Paul Bunyan lore, Spyman. If anybody knows the Paul Bunyan lore. And now, we're not talking about lakes. We're not talking about Paul Bunyan. We're talking about the Somali community. And of course, much of the media is all out in defense of the Somali community amid all of this fraud that has been, largely attributed to folks within that midst. This is Huffington Post is having a field day over the notion that the Somali community is quote unquote trolling Donald Trump for his criticisms over the fact that like hundreds of millions of dollars had been siphoned out of the public coffers through various fraudulent programs. So yeah, again, now it's back all over the news, as is, again, not the lakes. Now it's little Mogadishu, this little town known as Cedar Riverside. Sounds like a very picturesque little town there in Minneapolis, but in fact is now known as Little Mogadishu because that is the epicenter of the city's Somali American community. And I don't know what kind of newspaper this is. The World. Sound journalism grounded in facts and biblical truth. I actually would be curious to read more of this, but they seemed, I don't know when this piece is from. I just grabbed it because it mentioned the name of the community, Little Mogadishu, on the Mississippi. It is pretty close to the Mississippi River. And this is kind of what that looks like these days. And I'll talk a little bit about what some of these buildings are, but one of the main buildings in Little Mogadishu is this notorious apartment complex with all of the yellow, red, and blue balconies here. And what an interesting scene that building has become as the foremost epicenter within that community. And here are some scenes. Yeah, you get people basically walking around the streets in full Muslim garb, a lot of headscarves. You will hear the sound of the call to prayer off in the distance from the various mosques. There are about 90 mosques statewide in Minnesota now. The largest concentration of them there in this area known as Little Mogadishu. You can see Somali Street there. You can see off in the background individuals dressed in Muslim garb. It is a relatively low-income community, and it is dominated by these apartment-style residences that are generally the domain of relatively new immigrants to the United States. Some 40% of the community are people who have just moved to the United States, almost all of them from East Africa, ergo Somalia. A good quarter of the people in the community report to not knowing any English at all. Many of them, if they do know any English, it's certainly not a first language. And it is something like 30 or 40% of the community is living below the poverty line, which means you have a combination of people from other countries bringing the culture of other countries. You have people who basically don't know the language, and you have people living in extreme poverty. And that is a combination for a bit of cultural disconnect from the rest of the United States. And it has been named Little Mogadishu almost as though it is sort of like cute, akin to like Little Italy. The reality is that Little Mogadishu is one of the most dangerous countries, or one of the most dangerous cities on the face of the earth. It is a city with a crazy kind of political situation right now. And it's, there's a whole culture to it. Basically, it is dominated. It is dominated by, whoever controls each block basically controls Mogadishu. Like the way that the society works there is just profoundly different than it is here. Basically, in Mogadishu, It does, quote unquote, does not function as a unified municipal system. Authority there is layered and negotiated, not centralized. In Mogadishu, even though the federal government technically governs the community from an area known as the Green Zone, real control varies block by block. Security is split among the Somali National Army, police, clan militias, private guards, various military remnants, and informal enforcers. There are permit disputes. There's enforcement that is resolved basically on an ad hoc basis. There is clan mediation. If you want to build, import goods, or resolve a conflict, you will ask the question, who controls this space, not what is the law? So when you start to wonder, like, why does this community in Minnesota work this way, you have to think about the fact that this is the origin from which many of his residents are coming, and there's sort of a very different culture that's happening here. Life in the actual Mogadishu involves continuous risk management. Not exactly panic, but vigilance at all times. There are roadblocks that appear daily. There are routes that change. People learn which streets are safe at different times. You can't go particular places at particular times. You have to take different routes at different times of day just because different people are controlling it, setting up artificial tolls at different intersections. There are many different parts of the city you just need to completely avoid after dark. There are explosions that happen all over the place, though less frequently than in the past. Usually they're targeted explosions around government buildings, hotels, and checkpoints, and people are so used to the sound of gunfire that it isn't even cause for alarm anymore. People know the difference basically informally between celebratory firing, police actions, clan disputes, and actual attacks based on the sound and the context of the shootings, which is a pretty crazy thing. You need to hear a lot of shooting to be able to distinguish exactly how and what the shooting is coming from. There is security that determines where the cafes can locate. Every building has significant blast walls and setbacks because explosions have been very common over the last several years. Of course, outdoor public life is very limited. And again, these sort of artificial or these sort of unofficial militias are everywhere. You can see many of the streets have don't have full paved roads. You get areas where your car can get struck. You have people just sort of lingering at the side of the road. Electric power is basically entirely private. Neighborhoods kind of exist on their own enclaves, and they have their own small generators. Blackouts obviously are extremely common. Businesses all have their own power systems. Water is tucked in or drawn from private wells, so there's no real citywide water system. Obviously, if you're wealthier, you try to find a way to get water by some other means, like deliveries. There is no comprehensive sewage system. Again, the roads mostly paved unevenly. Again, these sort of random checkpoints set up by people who just happen to control that block. The economy is basically pretty darn informal. Goods are basically dispersed with nobody enforcing how much they cost. Bartering is everywhere. People borrow basically from people they know closely. Cash dominates. Banks aren't really a thing. And transactions are basically very, very quick. Everything is speculative. Chaos is the norm. There is, the reinforced concrete is the primary building material because everything is so precarious at so many times. Sidewalks barely exist. People never really hang out in the public realm. Streets are for movement and not for lingering. There are informal displacement camps alongside luxury villas. And so you have basically, parts of the city that feel like, let's call them informal settlements, to use a term that's often used to describe Latin America. The presence of women is very restricted in Mogadishu, especially in conservative areas. There is social life that happens for women, but usually in homes, not outside. There, of course, is basically no nightlife. There is basically no music. Alcohol is illegal. Entertainment is family-based or online. and you rely on your family, your clan, and your known networks rather than the government, rather than the systems of society. Strangers are treated cautiously, and trust is personal and not civic. People plan their lives in very short bursts because you never know if there will be a tomorrow. People plan based on days and weeks and not years. Long-term investment is hedged heavily. There is always a sense of risk and always a sense of fear. Everything demands constant attention. I tell you this to give you a little bit of context for exactly why the neighborhood of Little Mogadishu maybe exists in the way that it does. These are just some more scenes from the actual Mogadishu. I don't know what this guy is carrying. This is like some kind of giant fish. It's like a hammerhead shark or something. And you can see just buildings like, I don't know what you see these piles of rocks. You know, some of these scenes are very, very hard to even dissect because this building barely feels like it's standing. But then in the background, you have seemingly intact power lines. What a scene. What a scene. Here's some more scenes. Mogadishu is on the coast. In theory, it could be quite a beautiful place. This almost looks like just like ancient Roman ruins or something on the coast. The beach, of course, is just littered with trash. And it's just quite a chaotic scene in a lot of places. And again, you see these people representing themselves as militia people, trying to guard access and entry to things. There are a lot of places in the world where you probably don't want to go on vacation. This is very close to the top of that list. In the past, we've talked about places like Yemen. We've talked about places like Syria. Somalia is a place that definitely varies back and forth a little bit. I guess the further you like get up into the air, maybe the better it looks because you get a little bit of that seascape in the backdrop. But even there, you can kind of see the buildings are pretty haphazard. The multi-story buildings are pretty rare. And then in between, you have these informal settlements and just a lot of corrugated metal, a lot of concrete, a lot of people just kind of strewn about, and incredible levels of density and a lack of normal infrastructure. Here's another person, a couple of people just kind of walking. I don't even know what the hell's going on here. Like, how do you even get to a scene where there's that much trash strewn about? But sometimes, I guess, in Mogadishu, people do have fun, and you know, people do live there, and there is a whole society going on. There's about 4 million people that live in the city of Mogadishu. It is, of course, not wealthy, but it is a city, and it has its informal economy, and it has its culture. And these people seem like they're having some fun there on the coast. So that's kind of like the scene there. And it is, okay, here we go. There's who's in control. This is a map trying to figure out who is in control of Mogadishu. Because again, it's like hard to tell. Different groups control different blocks. And then different areas of the city are more dangerous than others. The fighting migrates constantly. There are areas of explosions. I mean, this is like, you could not imagine a place that just kind of feels more different, perhaps, than the community of Cedar Riverside. Again, this is the community of Minneapolis, and I have jumped here to this image, which is the legacy of the community of Cedar Riverside here in Minneapolis. This was a community that was originally settled by essentially European immigrants and was up until the 1950s, 60s, basically a bedroom community full of mostly Scandinavian immigrants. This was a famous confectionery that was very, very popular within the community for many, many, many years. Just, you know, your sort of Andy Griffith level candy shop. And lots of you know, European immigrants living here in, you know, just kind of the way that people built their lives in the United States back in that era. And they opened restaurants and bars, and there was a little main street that developed. And the bars lingered, many of them lingered. A lot of them are closing now, but many of them lingered for a very long time. And then eventually what happened is over time it sort of transitioned from that into a place that ultimately became more like this. But it didn't happen overnight. Because the first thing that happened is it became a kind of transitional, became a very sort of countercultural community, became home to some of the protest community in Minneapolis, and then eventually it became an enclave for immigrants, then eventually, for various reasons, became the epicenter of immigrants from East Africa. And now if you go, and we'll take a look at the community here in a few minutes, but now if you go to the community of Cedar Riverside here, it's you see a lot of storefronts that they speak about Somalia, they speak about halal, you see a lot of Arabic lettering and things like that, and a lot of vacancy these days, and a lot of cultural centers, a lot of things that are sort of referring to themselves as cultural centers. And when you sort of put yourself in the context of the culture we just described, this sort of skepticism of broader networks of authority, this idea that you sort of need to like figure out your network within the context of your own block, it makes sense why people who are coming from that culture to this culture are less willing to immediately buy into the whole kind of American way of doing things and sort of hold it close to the vest. You know, loan each other money. Don't go to a major bank to get a loan. And this kind of dominates the way that the culture operates within this community. You have scenes like this. Okay, this is, yeah, you see some of these buildings with some of the vacancies, some of the dilapidated buildings, some of these vacant lots, dilapidated sidewalks, and now some of these giant concrete apartment buildings that have emerged off in the background. And that is where so many of these Somali immigrants tend to live. And I thought this was quite an amazing picture, because you get Minneapolis, where everything is very, very cold and snowy, and yet there was an explosion and a fire in the dead of winter, and so this juxtaposition between the cold and the snow of Minneapolis and the heat and the decay of this community is quite an interesting side-by-side. All right, so that is the scene here in Cedar Riverside. And I want to take a quick look at how some of this stuff looks. First, I'll do a couple comments here, and then we can get to an ad or two. Let me see. Okay, we're playing out with some features here on YouTube, so let me pull up. There we go. There's our live chat. You guys are now live, like literally live on Land Speculation here on YouTube. So how about that? All right, let's scroll back all the way up to the top here. What do we got? So, okay, a lot of highs and hellos here. Norman Patterson, thank you for all the ducks. Tess Castro, thank you for all the ducks. Wow, that is a lot of ducks. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ducks there from Norman. 9, 10, 11 ducks. Counting Tess. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 ducks on top of, well, those are just carrot people. Those aren't really ducks. Those are just carrot people up there. And then one more duck here from Nightbot. Appreciate that, Nightbot. All right, all right. So we said hello to Spyman, Tess, and Norman here. Tess has given us a couple of pink waves. Appreciate that. Let's see, rolling right along here. Thiz has showed up and dropped even 3 more ducks here in the chat. Appreciate that. Yeah, okay. So scrolling along here. So we've been talking about little Mogadishu here. Did Paul Bunyan have foot problems? No, I think they named the foot problems after Paul Bunyan. But I don't know why. I really don't know. I need to dig into the whole history of Paul Bunyan and learn a little bit more. Quietcast says places in Minnesota and Michigan look like the Middle East. We're going to take a quick look here on the ground here in a minute. Little Mogadishu is like a Trojan horse, says Spyman. Yeah, a lot of people looking at that community, they're like, what does this mean? I mean, we do seem to have more and more enclaves of people in the United States that are not assimilating, perhaps, as maybe it was sort of the expectation of immigrant communities in the past. Calming the Chaos has joined us here in the chat, as is James Dean. I appreciate you guys stopping by here. Greetings and good evening. Quiet Castle says, I still don't understand why we'd allow so many people into our country that are completely incompatible with our way of life, and many of which we have not done any vetting on. Okay, James Games is complaining about the rain. Here we have some more ducks, and I don't even know what that is. That's like somebody making a pot of stew with chopsticks on top of a video game console there from Norman. Okay, and then a graduation mortarboard hat. All right. Maybe he had onions in his bunions. Well, it does rhyme. Bunion's better than crabs, that's true. That's true. Bunny versus crab. I think getting them to actually fight each other would be kind of hard, because I think the bunny would run away. I think if you force them into a consolidated space, I guess probably the crab would win. If it was like one of those bigger crabs. I mean, most crabs are much smaller than you think. You think like a crab is like big and scary, but crabs are mostly actually quite small. And I have played with the crabs before. I went to the Sausalito coast north of San Francisco and played with the crabs when I was a kid. We're having a very good time there, and I don't know if I got pinched or not. I can't remember. I don't know why that seemed so fun. Some things when you're a kid seem fun, and then as an adult they just kind of aren't as fun. Hanging out with your 6-month-old grandson, what a joyous thing, for sure, absolutely. If two vegans are having an argument, is it still considered beef? Nightbot. Nightbot sure has a personality these days. I don't know what has gotten into Nightbot. Nightbot has picked up a bit of an attitude. All right. We got to do an ad. Somebody drop a number here into the chat. I need a number between 1 and 15, guys. 1 and 15 here in the chat. I need a number. What are you guys thinking? Give me a number. 1 through 15. Otherwise, I'll have to stall for time. Slides are fun no matter how old you are. Yeah, I heard somebody just opened a slide amusement park, like an amusement park entirely of slides somewhere in the Midwest, and I'm pretty intrigued by that. The thing is, like, as an adult male, you can't really go to the playground without people thinking you're a little weird. It's just, if you go to the playground and you're an adult male by yourself, everyone else leaves. And I don't think that's fair, because I just want to go down the slide. Okay. James Games was first here, popping in the number 8 into the chat. So we're gonna try out number 8. Let's see if we actually have 8 loaded here. Let me see it, guys. Okay, we will be right back here on Land Speculation on YouTube.
Hi, Quiet Castle here. I hope you're enjoying our interactive chat. If you like hanging out with us here on YouTube, just a reminder you can continue the conversation over on our Discord. It's a fun place to hang out. We have questions of the day, you can post links and memes, post photos, debate things, and chat with your fellow land ducks any time of the day or night. It's also a great place to interact with the mods and with land directly. It's free to join and easy to use. You can open it right up in your browser, so give it a try. The link to join is in the description.
All right, guys, we are back on Land Speculation on YouTube. That was moderator extraordinaire Quiet Castle being a not so quiet castle because he was speaking. And that's the joke, because he's speaking. He's not quiet. He's a loud castle. Quiet castle being a loud castle. All right, let's take a quick look at exactly what is happening in some of these places. We'll pull up the, let's see, we'll pull up the old, what did I do with it? What did I do? Okay, there we go. Pull up the old map here. Okay, this is a map of the world. You guys can figure that out. Here's the, Europe and all that stuff. We're going to just take a quick peek in here over in Somalia. Let's see if we can find the city of Mogadishu here on the Somali coast. Look at that, it's Mogadishu here. It's like right on the coast. It should be beautiful. Look over, looks the ocean, and you zoom in on Mogadishu, and I don't think they have particularly good satellite imagery here on Mogadishu, but man, there's a little bit of greenery there. That's a good sign. Otherwise, man, it is a dense city. Look at these blocks here in Mogadishu. It is like, wow, look at this. Look at this, how tightly packed these buildings are. And they say they don't even have like stable sewage infrastructure. These buildings look like they maybe have been bombed. That's not a very good sign when you can sort of scroll block to block and see various buildings that have been effectively bombed out because bombings are so common there. Not the greatest sign. Not a lot of cars on the street, interestingly. At least not these main roads, whenever this is. And another thing I was noticing is scrolling around Mogadishu is like, it's a big city. There are not very many hospitals, not very many pieces of major infrastructure here. These look probably pretty wealthy. This is the Medina Hospital. I don't know, it actually doesn't look like that much. There is a hospital. And then, yeah, there's another one. These look like just kind of wards of people. So what is this? What's going on here? Oh, it's the Somali National University. That's a pretty interesting layout there for a university. Looks like they could use some water on the grass over there at Somali National University. And then, yeah, you get these really, again, just super, super, super dense blocks of housing. And this is probably among the wealthiest parts of the city of Mogadishu. And you get a lot more informal settlements, usually in these African cities around the periphery. You get some sporadic houses out here. And then, yeah, okay, that's just like desert vegetation. Doesn't seem like they get a lot of rain around here. Okay, so we're going to jump here from the city of Mogadishu over in Somalia, and we're going to pop way over the landmass of Africa. We're going to pop all the way over the North Atlantic Ocean here. It's a long flight from Mogadishu to Minneapolis. I cannot imagine that there are many ducks there in the city of Mogadishu. We're going to zoom in here on the state of Minnesota into the city of Minneapolis. Again, the largest city in the state of Minnesota, and again, not to be confused with the city of St. Paul, which is just down the road a ways. St. Paul is a different city. There's Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, and we'll zoom in here onto the, okay, there's St. Paul. It's downtown St. Paul, smaller city, and then you pop up here on 94 to go into downtown Minneapolis. And this is the downtown Minneapolis. If you've ever been to downtown Minneapolis, it's an interesting experience being there because it is so cold there so much of the year that they don't even bother having like stores and restaurants that much, like on the street level. And so a lot of the time you like walk around the city streets in downtown Minneapolis, it's like you're basically like just looking at concrete walls. They do have a really, really impressive interconnected skywalk system all over downtown Minneapolis, and a lot of like really good indoor places. But outdoors, it can be kind of dreary just because, again, like it's so cold so much of the year. People don't want to be outside at all. but they do have a bunch of tall buildings. It's kind of pretty. And they do have like the baseball stadium over there. This Target Field is really nice. It's where the Twins play. And then that. And then we'll zoom back to true north here. And then you go over to the east. You do a little hop, skip, and a jump here, and you land over here at the University of Minnesota, which is a big, obviously, state research university. It's part of the Big Ten. It kind of operates like most large universities. It is a pretty diverse student body as they go. And then in between the two, so in between downtown Minneapolis and the University of Minnesota, is in fact where you end up with, we'll close that, is where you end up with the community of Little Mogadishu, otherwise this place called Cedar Riverside, which basically sits right here. It is this community right on the other side of the river from the university and right between the university and downtown Minneapolis over here. Cedar Riverside, again, used to be a mostly immigrant community. It is kind of trapped between the highway here. I think when they built the highway, it kind of cut it off from some of these other residential areas because there's some, relatively, not upscale, but relatively prosperous residential areas, working class or middle class people living in these little houses on some of these blocks over here. But then you pop over to the other side of the highway over here and you get this enclave, and it has definitely transitioned over time. It is no longer a community primarily of Scandinavian immigrants. And basically what happened is the University of Minnesota kept growing and growing and growing and growing over the first half of the 20th century. And by the time the 1960s, 1970s rolled around, the university started building more and more of their facilities over on this side of the river. And so you can actually see, even to this day, some of these buildings like Middlebrook Hall here, the Carson School of Management, the Meredith Wilson Library, Ferguson Hall. I don't know what any of these buildings are, but they are all buildings that are part of the University of Minnesota. And so that meant students were spending more time commuting back and forth over the river to this side of the river. And when they started doing that, as students were looking for cheap places to live, they started moving into this neighborhood, the neighborhood of Cedar Riverside. And so what primarily had been a working class neighborhood of Scandinavian immigrants started becoming an enclave for student housing. Students living off campus, maybe sort of countercultural students. In the 1960s, 1970s, this neighborhood became basically an enclave of countercultural resistance, protest movements, students going against the grain, students that wanted to be hippies and bring their kind of left-wing politics and kind of build a community of people that would go to kind of offbeat coffee shops, places where they could go do like poetry slams and things like that. And gradually over time, that depressed the property values in the area. It made the area more attractive to young immigrants. It made it very attractive to populations like the various separatist movements and things like that, all of whom were kind of allied politically with the students. And so this cocktail over the 1970s, 1980s started turning this into a neighborhood primarily of immigrants. To this day, these days, the students don't tend to live here as much anymore. The neighborhood has basically been ceded very, very largely to immigrants. And this neighborhood, or this university campus over here is actually a different university. This is Augsburg University, which is one of the most immigrant-heavy universities in the entire country. And then in between those couple things, the University of Minnesota, downtown Augsburg University, is this neighborhood of Little Mogadishu. And it drags on for a number of blocks. It's actually not huge. Only about 9,000 people live in it. But again, more than half of them are Muslim. More than half of them are Somali. A very large plurality of them are first-generation immigrants. who are coming over from Somalia, and a great many of them do not speak any English. And it has created a condition on the ground that feels just like a little bit removed from the rest of the city, because that culture we were just talking through that is endemic to Somalia has started to make its way into the neighborhood, and you don't feel it at first. At first, you are just kind of wandering around the community, and it feels kind of like a lot of other communities. You'll see vacancy like this. This is a vacancy that is quite notorious in Minneapolis now. This was the home of what used to be called Palmer's Bar. Palmer's Bar was an institution that had been around for 119 years and was an institution in the neighborhood. It was a really, really classic haunt. And what happened is that next door, the local Somali community opened a mosque, and that mosque became one of the major community focal points within Cedar Riverside. It's interesting, like it doesn't even have any of the fixtures of a mosque. In fact, you look in the front, it just says Child Care Center, Home Health Services, a lot of things, again, these like very community-oriented resources, again, because these are, the Somali community has this kind of tendency to not interface particularly well with American institutions. Again, in Somalia, you got to protect your own within your neighborhood block. And so what happened is the Somali community was apparently not very happy that there was a bar here. Of course, alcohol is very much frowned upon within the Muslim culture, and similarly, the notion of women freely associating in a bar was frowned upon, and so it created a lot of cultural consternation. You had large gatherings of people outside the bar, and eventually it made it essentially untenable for the bar to continue operating. The bar closed, the bar sold to the mosque, and now the mosque owns this facility, and as you can see, not a lot of work has been done on it, apparently, although they do have cameras, interestingly enough. And so that is the scene there. And then as you make your way down Cedar here, you end up with seeing a number of businesses as you go along that start to look very, well, here you have Vietnamese and Chinese cuisine, but you start to have a lot of restaurants and institutions that start to feel very Islamic in their orientation. Immigrants and refugees welcome here at this building. And there's a lot of stuff like that. What's going on here? The African Development Center. And Jumbo Kitchen. And then, yeah, you end up, I go down a little further, you start getting a lot of, okay, this place says bar. But maybe the bar closed, and now this is the Kilma Njaro Grill. You have a lot of grills and restaurants that serve primarily Somali food. And you see there's on the Google Earth. I'm going to zoom back here on the Google Earth. You had somebody there in here you see full headdress garb here. And then somebody here clearly in also Somali attire. And then as you move down, you get closer to the end of the neighborhood, you get some of these institutions, these places that are notorious here within the neighborhood, like the Mixed Blood Center, which is a famous kind of performing arts venue here in the area. And it's all surrounded by, get ourselves back to true north here. It all surrounds this complex of housing, which we saw a couple images of that, but this is a notorious housing development here in this neighborhood of what they call Little Mogadishu. This is the place known as, let me pull up the name of it just to make sure I get the phraseology right. What did I do with it? Riverside Plaza is the name of this place. And this is an apartment building, as you can imagine, gets extraordinarily low ratings and all kinds of complaints. I have never been more disgusted with a place to live in my life. These apartments are a nightmare. First off, the elevator never works. It is a constant struggle, and you can forget about convenience. We reported it countless times, but nothing ever changes. You'll end up waiting forever just to get to your floor. As if that isn't bad enough, we have crackheads constantly knocking on our doors, trying to get into people's apartments. It's become a disturbing daily occurrence. I've honestly felt unsafe here more times than I can count. It's like they rent to absolutely anybody, no matter how dangerous or sketchy they may be. I'm terrified to even open my door anymore. Then there's the maintenance. What a joke. We called them for issues multiple times, then nothing gets fixed. It's like they don't care at all about the well-being of their tenants. The building is always filthy. The smell is always unbearable. It's like a mixture of mold, garbage, and stale air. I feel like I'm living in a dump. Security is equally useless. I've reported multiple times about neighbors selling drugs in the building and nothing ever happens. They just don't care. It feels like they let anything go, and I'm honestly scared to even walk around the hallways alone. Honestly, don't waste your time or money here. It's an absolute disaster. It's unsafe, unsanitary, and the management is completely incompetent. If you value your peace of mind, find somewhere else to live. This place is a nightmare. Many other critiques talk about extensive roaches and bed bugs and how often people are bit. Then others talk about the East African and West African people that live here are very welcoming, accepting of others, and show kindness towards everyone that comes here. Violence doesn't occur as much as it used to. I also talk about the convenience of the place. It is relatively inexpensive, but apparently the rent keeps rising. And yeah, it's apparently not a particularly good place to live. And a lot of people live there. That's got to be like thousands of units, and it's this sort of concrete style of build that feel. I mean, we're looking at those pictures of actual Mogadishu. You can see why this would be kind of attractive, perhaps, to people coming from Mogadishu in order to live. And then as you move up even further north, you get more of these Somali restaurants. This block, I believe, has quite a few of them. Let's see. That's an old image. Okay, the Red Sea Bar and Restaurant. There's a famous place over here called interestingly, this place is known as the West Bank. Speaking about being the West Bank of the Mississippi River, but there's a little bit of there's the West Bank Restaurant and Grill. It's a famous Somali restaurant there, and again you can get coffee there, smoothies, sambosa. The only thing that seems like you can't get in a lot of places here in Little Mogadishu these days is alcohol. And yeah, you see, okay, there's Asian lettering. So it's not something you see at first glance, but you do look around a little bit and you start to see instances in which the presence of Somali immigrants is really, really, really pervasive. Award-winning. Okay, yeah, looks like that might be some Somali food. And then, yeah, lots and lots of community centers. There are grocery stores that populate around the community, and many of them are halal grocery stores. I don't know if you've ever watched a video of a halal butchering, but it is awfully brutal. The slicing open of the neck of the animal. But I don't know. There's a lot of restaurants, a lot of grocery stores where people are doing a lot of complaining on the reviews, and having not been to many of them, I can't necessarily speak about it myself. But a lot of places that people are complaining, you know, um, maybe have some dishonest business practices, let's say. People being charged a lot more on their credit cards, people being harassed within the businesses. Of course, if you dig deep into the annals of YouTube, you can find some first person POV videos of especially women in this community trying to go into grocery stores or restaurants and being, let's say, treated not so well by some of the folks there. But it is a community, and there are a lot of people, I guess, just trying to kind of make their way there. And I think what it does have, though, is a very much a sort of brand of a lot of kind of older American businesses being displaced by immigrant businesses, and a lot of them being displaced in part because they're getting pressure from the community around things like alcohol, around things like the sort of the ways in which women go about their lives in those facilities, and a lot of them are closing. And the other thing is that you have a lot of these mosques that don't really look like mosques, but you will hear the sound of the call to prayer on a daily basis, and that has sort of just environmentally caused a lot of people who otherwise might have frequented this neighborhood to not be there. And it certainly is not something that Americans are used to seeing in their communities, where, of course, there is notoriously a separation of church and state, although church bells are something people hear. But the call to prayer is very, very, very distinctive. And it definitely, it looks different. It looks run down in a lot of ways. You see, obviously, a lot of people, there's a guy just sort of crossing the street in the middle of the street. There's more people down here crossing the street in the middle of the street. And, for some of it's just kind of the way it looks, gets people a little bit alarmed. And then you find out that this giant kind of fraud epicenter was here. And, especially given how we just jumped underneath the overpass, especially that you're literally only a couple blocks from downtown Minneapolis. You're literally about 4, 5, 6 blocks here. In fact, as the crow flies, you're about 4 blocks from the building that the stadium that the Minnesota Vikings play in, like the big football stadium the Minnesota Vikings play. And you hop over the highway, and that's where this Riverside Plaza is located, and all this fraud was happening. And then you jump another 4 blocks, and you're into the crux of the University of Minnesota, which people pay a lot of money to attend. And then you get pockets. You get pockets of this Somali community that also dots other parts of the surrounding neighborhoods here, with, again, some of these halal grocery stores and places where, on an intermittent basis, you're seeing some complaints just about a sort of disconnect in cultures, I would say, is kind of the big thing. And so when people say, like, this is a canary in the coal mine, that this could start becoming a bigger force in more cities, it kind of really takes walking around it and sort of seeing it on the ground to kind of know what exactly that means. It's sort of how different it feels than your typical American neighborhoods within major cities. And, I guess the hope is that you do start to see greater assimilation. And it's this is certainly at the fringe of situations where you are not seeing that right now, and you are definitely in an environment where cultural difference is sort of teetering on the edge of intimidation at times. It clearly has created a condition where some of these cultural centers sounds like have not been on the up and up, and unfortunately there's been too many people in bed with the politicians, creating a culture of like pretty extensive fraud, it sounds like. And all of this is alleged at this point, but the things that are percolating in the news are pretty extensive. So, it's actually like not a ton to see. It's just kind of a hard thing to really get your arms around. So I'll put the chat back up here and see what you guys are saying about some of this. Nightbot's getting a little whiny. I'm a little worried about what Nightbot is able to. Let's see. All right, let's get back to some of the comments here. MBK, I came across Little Somalia 25 years ago. There were about 100 people living around a small intersection. I thought it was quite odd that people from the hottest region of the world were living in the coldest region of the United States. Yeah, no kidding. It is really interesting that the Somali immigrant community has ended up focusing so much on the city of Minneapolis. I mean, just again, weather-wise, it's just profoundly different. Spyman thinks Nightbot needs to check into rehab. Yes, perhaps. Nightbot gets off. I don't know, is Nightbot male? Do bots have genders? Nightbot gets off its rocker a little bit. Let's see. Okay, lots of ducks where Norman is located. When was the last time I was in Minneapolis? Last time I was in Minneapolis was about a year ago. I spent some time in Minneapolis, and yeah, I might have some stuff from when I was in Minneapolis. I gotta check my archives. You guys have noticed we have a second channel these days. We have launched a shorts channel where I am gradually starting to upload and begin sharing some of the actual like first-hand travel content from various adventures around the world. And if you feel so inclined to jump on that other channel that we are now beginning to birth alongside this one, part of the reason we're doing that is to sort of not jumble content. This is going to be a channel sort of more for our long-form live streams and informational videos. But we also wanted to start sharing some of that first-hand kind of raw content that feeds into our perspectives of the world. And so that's going on to a channel we have recently launched called LANDCasts International. And it is a sister channel of sorts to this one. And it is just in its infancy. We've just started out and would love for some of you to come along on the ride with us over on that channel. So please feel free to join us over there. I believe Jeanette has posted the link in the chat. So we certainly appreciate people helping support that channel too, dropping likes and subscribes on the videos and comments on the videos and at least watching the content to try to give us a good start with the YouTube algorithm over there. It's obviously difficult for anybody that started a channel. It takes a long time for channels to kind of get off the ground. This channel has been around since 2006. We've had a long time to build our infrastructure. That channel is like a couple days old now. So we need some help getting some of the views up and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully eventually, if we keep being consistent about it, it'll grow. But we're at the beginning of the journey, testing that out. So maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. But if anybody wants to check that out, please feel free. We'll see if we have any Minneapolis stuff we can pop up there. Let's see. Within a few generations, the area just completely changed, says Quiet Castle. Yeah, that's the deal with little Mogadishu. I mean, there's so many other communities. People talk about some of the suburbs of Detroit, of course. We could do a deep dive into some of those. Same thing in Chicago. I mean, the change in some of the neighborhoods of Chicago over a few generations has been really, really profound as well. And that happens. I mean, that happens. You can't assume that your neighborhood is going to stay the same forever. Some neighborhoods get more prosperous. Some neighborhoods get less prosperous as people move around. And, people can move around. That's free association. But I think it does get concerning to people when there is a profoundly different cultural construct being created within a community. Apparently that Riverside Plaza was home to one of the characters in the TV show, The Mary Tyler Moore Show. I don't know that show that well, but apparently one of the characters was like Mary Richards or something like that. That doesn't name means nothing to me. I didn't watch the show, but apparently lived in that building when it was, I guess, newer. When did they build those buildings? Jeanette is asking. Looks like they built them in 19. So no. Yeah, 1970s. 1970s. I guess there's multiple buildings. It probably didn't all happen at once, but yeah, 1970s. So that would have been like brand new when that show was still on. Yeah, guys, we'll get the super chats up and running here very shortly. I guess there's some stuff we got to do in order to get that rolling. But yeah, for now, the Duck Fund link there is posted in the chat. Um, yeah, good times, guys. So what else is in everyone's minds right now? Like, what's going on in the world? It's like we're like a week out from the holidays. I say holidays. Christmas is next week. Christmas is next week. Goodness gracious, I gotta start shopping. That's kind of a joke. I've been doing some shopping. I'm not completely behind the eight ball. 2025 has been a rough year, says Quiet Castle. Looking forward to 2026. You always think the next year is going to be better. I remember watching the ball drop there in New York City on New Year's Eve in 2019. And the ball comes down and it's going to be 2020, and like 2020, like it sounds like such a nice number. It's like you have, clarity of vision if you're 2020. It's like, what a good year this is going to be, 2020. 2019 was a good year. The Nationals won the World Series in 2019. And everything was going well there, and then boy, we thought 2020 was going to be great. Everyone was celebrating there on like the first day of 2020. And then that turned in like to the year from hell. I suppose you could have a worse year, though that one was pretty bad. How does the real Mogadishu compare size-wise to an American city? So the real Mogadishu is apparently about 4 million people, which means it is a little bit bigger than Minneapolis as a city. 4 million people we're probably, okay, that's going to be bigger than Denver. It's going to be smaller by a little bit than Philadelphia or Boston. A little smaller than DC, but bigger than Minneapolis or Denver. So, pretty sizable city we're talking. Quite a bit bigger than a place like Omaha, bigger than a place like Cleveland. Maybe similar to a place like Detroit, maybe. Just in terms of size. I mean, in terms of character, we're talking comps that exist in like Uganda. We're talking comps that exist in Yemen, places like that. Not a lot of comps for Mogadishu in the United States, except now we have one, at least in a single neighborhood. There are not that many Somali immigrants in the United States, but the greatest preponderance of them is in Minneapolis, and while they don't comprise a huge percentage of Minneapolis at large, they do comprise a majority of that neighborhood. And, Minneapolis is not the kind of place you think. When you think of, if you go and you're going to hear the call to prayer out on the streets. I've been to a lot of countries in the Middle East. There are things you expect when you go to the Middle East that you don't expect in the United States, and vice versa. And maybe it is all part of the big global cocktail that we are all cultivating here on the earth, in which we are all going to become some future taupe monocultural thing where we all kind of like the whole world, there are no countries. We get John Lennon's dream of just a single global utopia in which there are no borders, there are no religions, everyone is the same. We're like the space aliens all wearing the same suits, and we all just defer to the wisdom of the state to control our lives. And there's like a single globalist overlord body of oligarchs that make all the decisions for us. And we all just receive our universal basic income paycheck, and then we speak in our politically correct language to each other and put up our little I don't know, the little squares on our various social media accounts to talk about how in solidarity we are with the righteous cause of the moment. Maybe this is just a step on the journey to becoming a more integrated future society. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's hard to do a multicultural democracy. America is the most successful example of that in the history of the world, and the reality of that is that, you know, you need people to start to kind of assimilate like a melting pot. A multicultural democracy only works if people actually start to share some values. Like, people treat it like America has been some failure because we are degrading people's cultures. Like, America is actually quite a fragile thing. Like, most major societies that have ever existed were pretty homogeneous. And America has attempted to create a truly multicultural democracy. And that is unprecedented at this scale in the history of humanity. And we have pulled it off amazingly well. And a big part of why America has pulled that off amazingly well is that we do sort of bring people into the fold with open arms, so long as they are willing to meet America halfway and play ball together, and then we can celebrate each other's differences as a core facet of our shared culture. And at the same time, we have to have some things that we actually do share in common. And if we don't share those things in common, then we are nothing but a whole bunch of disparate people living side by side. And disparate people living side by side who hold extremely fervent, radically different beliefs usually don't exist side by side very well. Just ask the Israelis and the Palestinians about how that goes. And so assimilation is rather important. But as always, there is a bit of sensationalism that comes with this stuff too. But there is original source material out there that we have not put on our channel, that we maybe could, but it's other people's content. All right. Once again, guys, if you haven't dropped a like or subscribe in the video, please do that. Those likes help us out with YouTube. The subscribes help you guys know when we're on. Check our description for the link to our Discord and our Duck Fund. The Discord link is our 24/7 chat platform. The Duck Fund is our Buy Me a Coffee link. I see I'm getting more used to it now. I have this intuition to say PayPal because for years it was PayPal. Like, I mindlessly have this little tick in my head. I know how to say that phrase, and now I have to completely reimagine it every time I say it. And I'm getting more used to it. It's the Buy Me a Coffee link. And I appreciate it. Looks like Norman Patterson just sent us a donation. Appreciate that, Norman, very much. And congratulations on your victory. Consider that your thanks for contributing to the Duck Fund. And your 3 cents. Maybe this video will earn 3 cents. We'll find out. I appreciate our mods hanging out with us here tonight as we experiment with some new things. Jeanette, Quiet Castle, James Games, very much appreciated. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us, offering your thoughts, listening to us, being part of this journey with us, bearing with us as we try out new features. We'll continue to evolve, continue to get better. YouTube is like an art now. You have to be, in order to run a casual YouTube channel effectively, you have to run it as well as people that do this literally as a full-time job now. I remember when YouTube first started, it was really fun because you just like, it was like a hobby. People were like, it was this novelty gimmick thing that people were having fun experimenting with, and now it's really competitive. People do this as their full-time livelihood, sometimes with massive staffs. It's hard to keep up with, but we do the best we can. So, with that, guys, we're going to wrap up tonight. I appreciate you hanging out with us and exploring little Mogadishu with us. I've got a whole bunch of, I've been taking notes on things that I want to make videos of. I've got a bunch that we're going to do. Find the time to do them. Let me know what you want us to see do next. What you want to see us do next. Like, I am an open book. I am an open door. If you have like a thing you want us to stream about, I will stream about almost anything if you tell us that you want to see a stream on that topic. And I am practically begging for ideas and thoughts about what people would like to see here on Land Speculation on YouTube that you think would be compelling. YouTube has this thing now, this inspirations feature. I can get inspirations from YouTube about ridiculous topics to stream on. And I am a crazy fan of getting ridiculous topics to stream about and then coming up with ideas for how to stream about them. If you've learned nothing else about us at this point, it is that we like to go on rambles about almost anything at all. And if there are tangents we can go off on, new topics we can research, it's always fun for us. Top fans, number 1, Norman Patterson, commenting away here tonight. Spyman looks like number 2. Calming the Chaos is number 3. James Games, number 4. Inquiring Minds stopped by here. Didn't even see Inquiring Minds here. Number 5. Tess Castro, number 6. Fizz, number 7. MBK, number 8. Douglas Butler, number 9. And Puffy the Weedfish, number 10. Well, congratulations to everyone on your excellent performances here tonight on Land Speculation on YouTube. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks to our mods. Don't forget to like, subscribe, join the Discord, contribute to the Duck Fund, all that kind of stuff. As always, don't be strangers because we will be back. This is Land. That ain't just speculation. And for now, I hope you all have a good night.